So you're reading from there. Wonderful.
That's okay, Prabhuji.
Yeah,
No problem. Hare
yeah, sure.
Krishna, everybody.
Yeah, you can start, Mataji, whenever you're ready.
Okay, Prabhuji, thank you. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. I'm going to start the prayers. Prabhuji, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's clear, Mataji. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanan Namaskrityam Naram Chevam Narotayam. Devi Saraswati Vyasham Tato Jaye Uddare Nistyaprayetu Adveshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhakti Uttam Sloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistike. Today we're reading from Canto 7, The Science of God, Chapter 2, Hiranyakasip, King of the Demon, from text 37 text 37 to 48. Text 37. Sri Yamaraj said, Alas, how amazing it is! These persons who are older than me have full experience that hundreds and thousands of living entities have taken birth and died. Thus, they should understand that they also are apt to die, yet still they are bewildered. The conditioned soul come from, comes from an unknown place and returns after death to that unknown place. There are no exceptions to this rule, which is conducted by the material nature. Knowing this, why do these unleash laments? Text 38. It is wonderful that these elder women do not have a higher sense of life than we do. Indeed, we are most fortunate, for although we are children and have been left to struggle in material life, unprotected by fathers and mothers, and although we are very weak, we have not been vanquished or eaten by ferocious animal. Thus, we have a firm belief that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has given us protection even in the womb of the mother, will protect us everywhere. Text 39. The boy addressed the woman, O weak woman, only by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is never diminished in the entire world, created, maintained, and again annihilated. This is the verdict of the Vedas, Vedic knowledge. The material creation consists of the moving and the non moving, is exactly like his plaything. Being the Supreme Lord, he is completely contemplated to destroy and protect. Contempt to destroy and protect. Text 40. Sometimes one loses his money on a public street where everyone can see it, and yet his money is protected by destiny and not seen by others. Does the man who lost it get it back? On the other hand, if the Lord does not give protection, even money maintained very securely at home is lost. If the Supreme Lord gives one protection, even though one has no protection and is in the jungle, one remains alive. Whereas a person well protected at home by relatives and others sometimes die, no one being able to protect him. No one being able to protect him. Text 41. Every conditioned soul receives a different type of body according to his work, and when the engagement is finished, the body is finished. Although the spirit soul is situated in a subtle and gross material body in different form of life, he is not bonded by them, for he is always understood to be completely different from the manifested body. Text 42. Just as a householder, although different from the identity of the house, thinks his house is to be identified with him, so the conditioned soul, due to the ignorance, accepts the body to be himself, although the body is actually different from the soul. This body is obtained through a combination of portion of the earth, water, fire, And when the earth, water, and fire are transformed, in the course of time, the body is vanquished. The soul has nothing to do with the creation of the dissolution of the body. Text 43. As fire, although situated in wood, is perceived to be different from the wood, as air, although situated within the mouth and the nostril, is perceived as to be separate, and as the sky, although as pervading, never mixed with anything. So the living entity, although now engaged within the main material body of which it is source, is separated from it. Text 44. Yamraj continued, O Laminator, you are all fools. The person named Suryajana, for whom you laminated, is still lying before you and has not gone anywhere. Then what is the cause for your lamination? Previously, he heard you and he replied to you, but now you find him that you are laminating. This is contradictory behavior, for you have never actually seen the person within the body who heard your reply. There is no need for your lamination for the body. You have always seen it lying here. Text 44. Sorry, text 45. In the body, the most important substance is life, air, but that is also is neither and listening nor the speaker. Beyond even the life air, the soul also can do nothing, for the super soul is actually the director in cooperation with the individual soul. The super soul conducting the activities of the body is different from the body and the living force. Text 46. The five material elements, the 10 senses, and the mind all combine to form the various part of gross and subtle body. The living entity comes in contact with the material body, whether high or low, and later gives them up by the personal power. The strength can be perceived in a living entity's personal power to possess different type of bodies. Text 47. As long as the spirit soul is covered by the subtle body, considering of the mind, intelligence, and false ego, he is bonded to the result of fruitive activities. Because of this covering, the the spirit soul is connected with the material energy and must accordingly suffer material condition and reversal continually life after life. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thanks so much, Atyali Bel Sridhar Mataji. Hare Krishna. So I'll offer brief prayers and we can get started. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chekshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So it's a wonderful section. I loved reading this section. I'm thankful for all of your association. So we all can daily hear Srimad Bhagavatam, read Srimad Bhagavatam together and discuss Srimad Bhagavatam together. One caution and then I'll give and then we'll do discuss some themes and then we'll go into the details. Yeah. The caution is the subject matter we're going to discuss is foundational to Krishna consciousness, is very fundamental Krishna consciousness that we all heard many times. How we are not this body, we are a spirit soul. Still, this subject matter is very important for us to understand because we learn this from Bhagavad Gita. Now, in Srimad Bhagavatam, we are hearing elaboration of that. That is why We're meant to read Bhagavad Gita first, understand, and then come to Srimad Bhagavatam also. Yeah. But irrespective of however we're reading, ultimately Srimad Bhagavatam is also giving the conclusions of Bhagavad Gita nicely in a story format with elaborated instructions. So how do we caution ourselves when our mind says, I know this, I don't need to worry about it? Like that, one thing to understand, when we're hearing the same subject matter we already heard before, or say reading the same subject matter we already read before, when the mind proposes, I already know this, I already know this, one way to reflect on it, contemplate deeply on that is that I know it correct, but are my thoughts aligned with that understanding fully? Are my words aligned with that understanding fully? Are my actions aligned with that understanding fully? That when our thoughts, words, and actions are aligned with what we know, then we can really say, I know. Otherwise, we know only at a superficial level, theoretically. So it needs to go deeply into application level for us. Same is the knowledge of the soul is also same way. Okay. So that means when we're hearing, we need to see how can I accept this in my heart level? How can I understand properly so that I can act at that level in terms of my thoughts, words, and actions like that. That is a one caution I wanted to give. And the totally today's theme is primarily about how a soul, we are a spirit soul, separate from this material body that we are in currently, and then how thinking that we are this body or mind leads to suffering, and how if we engage our mind in the service of Krishna, we can get liberated from this bondage of the material body. That is the essential theme for the session today. Yeah. So we'll go into the context and then we'll go into details of the verses. So overall context we know is from seventh canto, first chapter. We heard um, the description. Initially, it started with the discussion between Sukadeva Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj, and then it landed into discussion between Narada Muni speaking to Yudhishthira Maharaj, answering his questions at the Rajasuya Yajna. So we discussed how this whole seventh canto is the conversation between Narada Muni and Yudhishthira Maharaj. In that conversation, Yudhishthira Maharaj asked a question about Prahlad Maharaj and Hiranyakashipu. How come Hiranyakashipu is so envious of Prahlad Maharaj like that? So Narada Muni is describing to Yudhishthira Maharaj that pastime of Prahlad Maharaj, how a pure devotee with a pure inclination uh, is can be seen with a practical example in Prahlad Maharaj like that. So in that context, he explained how Hiranyakashipu was mad because mad means angry uh, because his brother Hiranyaksha was killed by Varahadev, Supreme Lord as Varahadev. So he was mad, and then he became angry and he was wanted to destroy the Brahmanic culture we heard. And after that, he started to console his mother and wife of Hiranyaksha and his sons of Hiranyaksha and the relatives. He wanted to console them of the grief that they are going through because of the loss of their family member Hiranyaksha primarily, who is killed by Supreme Lord. In that context, he explained philosophically how the soul is still intact, only the body went away, but the soul left the body and soul will find another destination. Like that, he gives the knowledge of the soul in the body, Hiranyakashipu. And then he wanted to elaborate with an example and instructions from Yamaraja. So in that context, he started to describe the first example where there is a king by name Suyagna who was fighting fiercefully in the battle, but even then he died in the battle. And because he died in the battle, he had queens who were very attached to the king. Because they were very attached to the king, they were lamenting over his body. They were lamenting so much, even though lamenting is natural for a loss of a family member, but lamenting so much that they are stopping the body to be taken for cremation. So that was the attachment we heard. And what does attachment mean? Attachment means like when our emotions are coming in the way of our actions of our decisions like that. So it's important to have affection for others and our family members and others. But if that affection becomes attachment, then we cannot do what is good for them, what is good for us, what is good for others also. So that is why we have to be careful with attachment. So that is one aspect. Then, so we heard because of, so he who is describing, Hiranyakashipu is describing the story of King Suyagna. Now, King Suyagna's wives, queens are lamenting over the king's dead body. So they're not letting the body be taken out also. That time, Yamaraja comes there, we heard in the last session in Friday. Yamaraja comes how? As a young boy. So either because the person who died, King Suyagna, is pious, or the women, the queens who are present there are devotees. That is why Yamaraja personally came instead of Yamadutas. We heard from Vishwanath Chakravarti commentary. And then from Prabhupada's purport, we also heard how Yamaraja chose to come as a small boy because small boy is allowed anywhere usually. And then also with less restrictions. And then when small boy speaks philosophy, it is appealing, attractive, and people listen and try to absorb it like that. So those are two reasons we heard in the last verse of the section where we ended on Friday. Now continuing on the next verse onwards, let me go to that section. Yeah, we're starting at verse number 37 today, in 7th Canto, 2nd chapter. So it's a very beautiful section. Please pay attention, even though it's a foundational knowledge. So 37th verse, first of all, Yamaraja as a small boy expresses his wonder. I'm a small boy. I know this knowledge of the soul and body. These are all elderly women. How come they don't understand that soul has left the body? It's just body is there. I don't need to lament for the death of a person. How come they don't understand? That's what he's expressing his wonder in this verse, that seventh verse. So, so the point is, Vedic conclusions, including Bhagavad Gita, tell us that the material body we are in currently as a spirit soul is temporary. So, in one day or the other, it will die. So, that is a fact they are describing. Bhagavad Gita and scriptures describe for us. And an example Prabhupada gives in the purport here, the same thing he describes in Bhagavad Gita also is like our body is like a dress. So one time it's when we leave this body at time of death, we're leaving like dress and taking another dress like that. That another dress can be another material body in another species of life, or it can be a spiritual body in the spiritual world like that. So both possibilities are there. But death is only transitioning point. So other day, I don't remember the exact quote. Yeah, other day, one of the quote I saw was interesting in one of the session. So they were describing how for a devotee who practice nicely, death is like just like you close the eyes at time of death, and then you open your eyes and you are in Krishna's service directly like that. That was inspiring for me to hear. So like that, as long as we practice our devotion service nicely, we'll continue our devotion. Or if you perfect our devotion service, we'll go directly into Krishna's service also in spiritual world. That is a death. So devotee, we do not need to lament for lament heavily for the death. In fact, it is we as devotees are encouraged to contemplate on death. One time, Swami Bhagavan Keshav Swami Maharaj was telling that when he was young, he was making it a point to go attend as many funerals as possible, it seems. Why? Because that gives the reality of what can happen to us and very close to us also. So that should give us uh, a jolt that what am I doing with my life? Am I spending my time for the most valuable things that I want to do? For the most important mission of life, am I spending my time and energy like that? That's also a reminder for us like that he was describing. So like that, so death is a reminder for us. In fact, even motivational speakers, like for example, Stephen Covey, in the Seven Habits of Highly Successful People, I believe in the first chapter itself, he talks about this. So he talks about the principle of begin with the end in the mind like that. Whenever we're doing something, think about the outcome, think about the purpose, think about the why we are doing like that. In that context, he describes how he gives exercise to reflect on, okay, now reflect on few years from now, I will die. At that time, there are lots of people who were assembled and for my memorial. Then what do you want them to remember me as? What do you want them to think about me as? What values I embodied like that? What service I did like that? What are the accomplishments I made in my life? What do I want them to be remembered like that? Like that, think about it. Then that will give us, oh, I want them to remember like this, but I'm not behaving like that right now. So how can they, if I want somebody to remember me as a kind devotee, but I'm not kind to many people right now, how can somebody remember me as a kind person? Like that, there's an example I'm giving. Like that, similarly, so many goals we might have uh, that are more meaningful when we think about death for us like that. And also, death brings a sense of urgency for us in our life. So we'll go into the next verse, 38th verse. Yeah, Yudhishth- Yamadharmaraja as a young boy is continuing his wonderment. How come these women, elderly women, don't have a higher sense of life than I do? Like that is telling. And then, even though I don't have any parents taking care of me, even though I don't have a home where I'm not protected by father and mother, still I have firm belief that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who protected me in the womb of my mother, will also protect me everywhere. I have this faith that Supreme Lord will protect me in the past and Supreme Lord will protect me now and future also. I have this faith. How come this elderly woman don't have faith like that? Is thinking like that. Um, so point Prabhupada elaborates in the purport is that birth and death are arranged by Supreme Lord. Circumstances in our life are also arranged by Supreme Lord, like that he describes. Then Prabhupada also writes about how we can either choose to act independently, thinking we are independent and acting for our own enjoyment, or we can choose to act according to the directions of Supreme Lord Krishna. Then when we act according to the directions of Krishna, then we can go back to spiritual world from this temporary material world, like that is describes also Prabhupada. Next, going to 39th verse, the boy, Yamaraja as boy, is still speaking. He says, "Oh, weak woman, only by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the entire world created, maintained, and annihilated. Being the Supreme Lord is completely competent to destroy and protect also." So, have faith in Supreme Lord's actions, Supreme Lord's sanctions in our life, and have faith in protection of Supreme Lord and take shelter of Supreme Lord. Like that is describing indirectly here. So, in the purport, Prabhupada talks about uh, this verse is a uh, answer to possible question from the wives of the queens, who queens are wives of the king Suyagna. What is the question they might ask? Oh, you say Supreme Lord protected in whom? Then why did not he protect now our king? Like that they might ask. So that's why he's saying one cannot argue about the activities of Krishna because they are always free. And because Krishna is always free, he is not bound by certain rules and regulations that we all need to impose on him. So he can protect and he can also annihilate at any time. So if let us say we can bound Krishna by certain rules, then what is the where is the understanding that he is Supreme Lord beyond all the rules and regulations, beyond everybody's jurisdiction? He's not, he's omnipotent. He's beyond anybody's control like that. That's what he's describing here. In text number 40, there are some examples are given to understand Supreme Lord's protection. How we should develop faith in Supreme Lord's protection. One example given is sometimes, actually, many of you might have experienced. I also experienced. The example given is sometimes we lose money in a public street where everybody is roaming around like that. We lose some money or some valuable thing, or laptop or cell phone or something. We lose in a public place. But then After some time we come back, it's still there. Even though there's every possibility, but somebody would have stolen it or somebody would have taken it like that. So that is one example he gives. And then, but some people, they store their money safely at home so that nothing can happen to it. But still somebody will come and steal the money. So this contrast is trying to explain, if Supreme Lord's protection is there, then even if you place in public place without all arrangements of safety, your money will be there. Even if you place, try to secure in different ways, if Supreme Lord's protection is not there, it will go. Like that is describing. That doesn't mean it is not encouraging negligence in our duties. It's not encouraging negligence in giving protection to our dependents, negligence in protecting our belongings. It is not encouraging that. It's telling we'll make whatever practical arrangements that we can in a reasonable fashion. Reasonable fashion. That's a keyword, important word. Reasonable fashion, while taking shelter in Krishna. So many of us might face different circumstances in life. We cannot uh, f- avoid or prevent many difficult circumstances in life. But if we take shelter in Krishna when we are well, and we take shelter in Krishna when the difficult circumstance comes, Krishna will do the needful so that we can continue in bhakti nicely. Even though circumstance seems very difficult and insurmountable currently. That is one example is giving. Another example is giving is, uh, even though somebody may be in the forest without any protection, then still he may be protected from all the wild animals may be there. Lions may be there, tigers may be there, snakes may be there, but they're still protected. But even somebody may be at home and thinking that he's safe along with relatives, still he might die. So that way, unless Supreme Lord's protection is there, there's no guarantee of our protection in the material world. Like that is describing. So when we understand like this, we utilize our free will to surrender to Supreme Lord, take shelter of Supreme Lord, and ultimately seek his protection only. That is the point Prabhupada is emphasizing in the purport. Going to text number 4. This is a very important lesson for us. Seeking shelter of Supreme Lord all the time when everything is going well, and when some difficult circumstance happens in our life, we need to really take shelter of Supreme Lord even more, like that. So I know several devotees on the call are going through difficult circumstances right now also. So that's why I'm emphasizing this point. We need to take shelter of Supreme Lord in all difficult circumstances we encounter in life. Going through text number 41. So he describes, uh, depending upon the work we do in this body, we receive the next body. So um, spirit soul, even though it's situated in subtle and gross bodies, is not bound by them, because he's always completely different from the body. So he's explaining the principle, Yamadharmaraj, that soul is different from the material body, like that. So in the purport, Prabhupada is emphasizing again, if you notice in the purports, Prabhupada is emphasizing what do we need to do? Okay, I understand I'm not body, I'm soul. So what do you need to do? He's emphasizing the theme that we should have firm faith in Supreme Lord and take shelter of Supreme Lord. That is the direction Prabhupada is emphasizing in all these purports. That way, we can become free from modes of nature and we can go back to spiritual world, like that. So, but if you're on the contrast, if you're attached to the body, then where will it leads to suffering. That will come in the next verses also. So here the women in this case are shattered, and they're not being sheltered. They did not take shelter in Supreme Lord. That's why they're lamenting so much. But somebody takes shelter in Supreme Lord, then it will that spiritualizes the material affection, and they don't lament like this. Going to the 42 verse, um, here is describing another example. So sometimes a householder may think I am the house, like that. But more common example Prabhupada gives, which he gives in the purport also here, is that I am the car. We don't think we are the car, but we act like we are a car. For example, something happens to our car, then we say, oh my God, we get so much pain as if like somebody hit us directly, like that. So that's what Prabhupada is writing in the purport for us. So similarly, if we think that we are this body out of ignorance, then that leads to suffering like that. But the soul has nothing to do with the creation and dissolution of the body like that. Prabhupada, Yamadharmaraja is explaining to them as a young boy. And he gives another example how soul is separate from body like that. How fire, even though it's coming from the wood, it's separate. Air, even though it's in the mouth and nostrils, it is separate. Sky, although it's always pervading, it's not mixing with anything like that. So even the spirit soul, even though it's in the body, so it is never equal to the body like that. It's separate from the body. So under all circumstances, we should simply depend on Krishna and thus revive our intimate relationship with Krishna, and then we must depend on his authority and control. Prabhupada writes in the purport. So now in text 44 he says, okay, two perspectives he explains, Yamadharmaraj. One is, if you think Suyagna is just body, not a soul, then why are you lamenting? He's still, body is still there. Don't lament like that, number one. Another perspective is, if you think he's a spirit soul and the body is just coming into being and going away, then why lament? Because his spirit soul is still intact. So don't worry. Like that is coming in this verse. Going to the next verse, 45th verse. Uh, Here he's telling all action is dependent on super soul. So surrender unto the super soul. That is the principle he's saying. So super soul is actually the director of everything. That means based on our desires, super soul is giving memory and remembrance and forgetfulness. We hear that in Bhagavad Gita, right? Mata smritir gnanam apohanam cha, like that. So based on the desires, super, super soul needs to remind us, and super soul needs to sanction for us, and then only we can do whatever we want to do. When we understand that, we depend on super soul. We take shelter of super soul and act accordingly, like that is in this verse is described. So it's already 732. I'll summarize the last three verses, 46, 47, 48. Essentially, here, what is describing is, if if we think that we talk, there is one possibility is we think we are this gross body that is made of this matter, right? And the possibility is we're thinking the mind, intelligence, and false ego like that. Then we're also trapped by the experiences of matter. So when we think that we are body or mind, then whatever suffering comes to body and mind, we think it's suffering for me. And then we are dragged down like that. So a couple of nice examples. I will end with these two things, which are impactful for me. Hopefully it helps you also. Yugal Kishore Prabhu was giving a class on Monday morning, last Monday morning, after he gave a class on Sunday feast at the temple. I could attend only the 20 minutes of the class, but still it was amazing for me. He was giving a couple of examples. One example he was giving was that basically the verse he was covering, there was a sentence in the verse translation that says, happiness from sense gratification is simply imagination. Like that, it was there in the verse. So he was explaining how happiness from sense gratification, how come it's imagination? Like that, he's explaining. So obviously, when we do something, when we see something nice, when we hear something nice, when we taste something nice, we'll feel some happiness, right? That's correct only. Then how come it's called imagination? That's what he's explaining. One example he gives is, let us say I love particular sweet. Let us say gulab jamun or something. I love a particular sweet, and somebody brings a big bowl of gulab jamun for me. So I love it so much. Uh, d- I would have taken it very quickly if any other time. But at the same time, suddenly I heard that my son is in trouble. Son met with accident, or my father met with accident, something like that. Then I have something that I like very much right in front of my eyes. And then I heard the news of my relative or family member in distress. So now, at that time, do I go quickly go run to see my son or my father, or do I sit and happily relish eating gulab jamun? Like that, he was giving example. So same sense object that was giving happiness in one circumstance is not giving happiness anymore now. So that means happiness is a concoction in the mind only, like that. That is the one example he was giving. Because my mind is distressed now, mind is above the senses, happiness of senses is not cutting it for me. Like that, he was describing. Nice example. Another important concept that His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu describes is also very valuable for me. These are actually very, very helpful in guarding ourselves from sense gratification and focusing on taking shelter of Krishna, focusing on keeping focus on spiritual life, like that. Whenever we focus, get a decision time, oh, should I enjoy this or should I not enjoy this, like that? Then we can consider this example he is giving. Let us say I'm in a desert, and desert, we know, is usually deserts are without any water. So that means I have option to get a fraction of a drop of water on this direction, or go little bit more extra mile, walk one extra mile. I get a lake or oasis full of water, like that. So if the sense gratification is like this drop of water, it gives some enjoyment and happiness, correct? But the drop of little fraction of a drop of water, how much it can quench the thirst? Very, very, very little. But it's better than nothing, right? But if I go to the other side and go to the oasis or lake, then I can drink enough water to quench my thirst fully. And in fact, I can even clear my hunger also if I get enough water, like that. So that lake or oasis is like taking shelter of Krishna, serving Krishna, engaging in devotion service of Krishna, like that. So this drop of water is robbing me of getting lot of water from the oasis. Similarly, this little bit of sense gratification is preventing me to enjoy spiritual bliss, eternal spiritual bliss through devotion service, like that. So that is how Chaitanya Charan Prabhu describes the same principle. How sometimes is described sense gratification, happiness from sense gratification is the product of mind, is this imagination, like that, is imaginary, like that. So like that, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu described nicely. That also was helpful for me. So hopefully it helps you also. We'll end here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kupasindhu Bevacha.